nice to be with you. Welcome to this panel on innovation for humanitarian response and development. I'm here, as introduced, with our distinguished group of panelists. Very happy during this Kampala Innovation Week to chat with them about this important transformation of our world in the last few months. We're going to have a bit of a Q&A time. Is Jackie also hearing us? And then we will be answering a couple of questions from the audience. So whatever comes to your mind, please get ready to ask your questions. All set? Is this okay if I do this? So I can look at my panelists? Okay, welcome. Thank you for being here. We're here to talk a little bit about how the innovation scene has been changing during this time of COVID-19. As we know, COVID-19 has hit the marginalized groups, the marginalized persons in our society, the hardest. It's been complicated in terms of maintaining their livelihoods, continuing to have economic opportunities, continuing to send their children to school. And also, it's been observed that there is a rise of abuses and violence within households. So very concerning trends. At the same time, this crisis has also clearly been a time of undeniable creativity. It has catalyzed innovations. It has given opportunities to entrepreneurs to come to the forefront with solutions. So now, we are at a junction time where we have a challenge. As a society, we need to think about how can we bring those innovations to those that need them most? How can we make sure that those COVID-19 innovations are benefiting also those marginalized groups? And as an ecosystem building support organization, how can we help entrepreneurs innovate in a way that is going to be socially impactful and support those marginalized groups? I would like to start with Jackie. Is Jackie here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining us from Nairobi. If you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about some of the trends that the GSMA has been observing in this time of pandemic and pandemic response, please.
Thank you very much, Charlene. So my name is Jackie Mabur, and as you've heard, I'm in Nairobi. I'm with the GSMA's Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation program. And what we specifically look at is how can mobile and digital solutions support humanitarian programming. And we do this by creating the right partnerships between mobile operators and mobile and digital service providers and the humanitarian actors. So this year has been quite interesting, looking at it from the mobile and digital space. So some of the things that we have seen that have been happening, driven by the COVID-19, for example, is on an infrastructure basis, where mobile and digital service providers have had to increase their infrastructure capacity just to deal with the increasing demand on their networks and their systems. And the systems that have been creating a big demand on their services would include what we call essential service value chains. So it would be looking at health value chains, looking at education, and critically food logistics. So how do technology value chains support these services, but also remotely and also with the increasing demand? Zooming in specifically in the humanitarian space, what we have seen as a trend is, number one, quite clearly, the accelerated use of digital payments to support humanitarian programming. And by digital payments, I mean either through card or either through mobile money. Another trend that we have seen that has caught up over time would be the remote recipient registration and verification. Just by keeping in mind that COVID-19 compliance means that you cannot do the village assembly that you normally would do to register people. So now you have to find ways of registering them remotely, but also verifying that they've received the services that they're supposed to be getting. And this ties in also to remote feedback mechanisms. How do you know that the humanitarian assistance you're giving to a person or a household is doing what it's supposed to do at the time it is supposed to do? So some need for some remote feedback mechanisms in place, using voice IVR, using SMS, using USSD. Another one has been just really rapid needs assessment toolkits. How do you determine what a household needs at the time? How can we tell that a household has suddenly become economically insecure by due to this shock by COVID-19, and we need toolkits to assess this so that we can determine the kind of help we can give them. And so there are various digitally supported toolkits that have come up to support this work. And then finally is rapid contracting, which has been really interesting to know, and rapid contracting between mobile and digital service providers and our humanitarian actors, because many times the contract negotiation is long and tedious, and so, but because driven by this COVID-19 pandemic, there's really been a lot of ways, working together to get these agreements done quickly. And then the last one, which is overarching, is a lot of government regulatory support to, for example, reducing limits on mobile money wallets, reducing costs, removing taxation, reducing KYC, know your customer requirements to allow for access to digital and mobile services. So those are some of the things. I'm happy to send further, reading material. It's quite a lot with specific examples from different countries. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jackie. Very inspiring to hear how some of the how the crisis has pushed out of necessity some really positive adaptation trends, actually. And we are seeing adaptation at the global level of this, like really structural system change, but there is also a lot of change for each of us at an individual level, at a business level. We are all introducing new ways of working. So on that note, I would like to invite you, Matthias, to tell us about your work and the work of Startup Africa, and how the entrepreneurs you're working with have also been pivoting and transforming their work.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you so much, Charlene. My name is Matthias Mobius. I'm co-founder of Startup Africa, and we have entrepreneurship and innovation programs running at 10 universities in the country, building student clubs to make innovation a core element of university structures. I myself am running our incubation program, where we guide startups on a weekly basis, and in the last month have also started investing in very early stage startups. And I wanna mainly jump on two stories from the incubator. Once COVID hit, of course, it hits a lot through infrastructures and logistic chains that have been disrupted. So the first startup I want to mention is in the health tech field, and they were formerly working together with gyms and others to provide much more convenient solutions for customers to access health facilities and so on. So once COVID hit and that was no longer possible, one needed to reinvent oneself, because it was really always a choice between do I just wait until it's over or do I just do something completely different? And that's not always easy, but the core thing is to talk to your customers and see how you can deliver the value, because it's still about the value that is needed in a different way. So what they have started to do is to, together with the clients that they had, build a home workout system to guide people online and offline and with direct interaction to actually stay fit and healthy in COVID times. Another team I want to mention is in the education sector. So they had add-on programs at schools running, and of course this was disrupted because schools were no longer open. Kids were at home. And they couldn't do their services, sell their services anymore. And I mean, this was a countrywide huge problem. Kids were at home for such a long time. So what they did, instead of going online, which is always also a bandwidth problem, you mentioned the topic of inclusivity, they have sat down and completely went through a new product development cycle to build a hardware product that you can have in your home and build it's basically on the intersection of being a toy and at the same time for young kids to learn about hardware and electronics. And then maybe as a last thing to mention, we run an innovation program with the Digital Human Rights Lab, and of course work in the humanitarian field and the human rights field. And you mentioned an increase of domestic violence and similar topics. So a big challenge is also that the work that human rights defenders are doing is no longer, or was no longer possible in the same way, because movements are restricted, access is restricted, communication is restricted, and so on. So what we've also seen is, and I mean this is an ongoing process, but you need to reinvent how support looks like, especially for remote communities and more remote villages that are not as well connected. And that includes hardware, meaning you need to see how you ensure that in certain communities there is, for example, a focal person available with the hardware necessary to be a focal point interacting with the human rights defenders and being able to build a bridge between communities and the world outside. And just as a closing note on that, I think as much as the situation is very hard, it also comes with a lot of opportunities. Of course, a lot of work needs to be done, but finally it can push us to build more resilient and better structures to do the work that is being done.
Thanks for this note of optimism. We all need it these days. But it's very interesting to hear how we have to keep those principles at the core of the work if we want to stay relevant. And this is something the Response Innovation Lab is also strongly advocating for. Know your customer if you're an entrepreneur. Know your target group if you're an NGO. And that's how you're going to make a solution that is actually going to work for them, right? And that is something that SINA is also really good at. So Emile, if you can tell us a little bit more about your work with young people and refugees and how they've been maybe inspired by the crisis to find new ways of supporting community members.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, my name is Emile KWILYAME, and I come from the Social Innovation Academy, simply SINA. And we've been working now a bit closer, sorry. Okay. Great, here. Thank you. Yes, I was saying that my name is Emile KWILYAME, and I come from the Social Innovation Academy, SINA. And we've been in Uganda since 2013 until now, and I've scaled up to now 4 countries, that is Zimbabwe, Congo, and in Congo we have 2 places, that the eastern part of Congo, Goma and Kinshasa, then also scaling to Kenya, and perhaps next year to Venezuela. So we help young people to turn their challenges into opportunities. And what do I mean by that? So we look at the values that every human being on earth has a reason why we're here, and we help young people to realize what is the value instead of doing competitions around around ideas, but rather realize what you're good at, what is the reason of your being on earth, and then turn that into creating innovation that support the challenges within the communities. Currently, we've been able to to scale up to Bidibidi, an Akivala refugee settlement, also in Kampala, and we have another branch within PG district. During this pandemic, it's not been easy for the young refugees really to access education and mostly, I think, facilities when it's come to health, because you find that even for Ugandan nationals, it has not been easy. We allocate, there is one hub, for example, in Zambia, and there has been, for example, when the COVID situation started, distributions around foods, And it's been a competition because then refugees will claim that they're not being seen as human beings. At the same time, nations will say, why would refugees get food while another neighbor does not? And it's been a challenge that really gave these young people the motivation to see, instead of keep complaining, what can we do instead? What innovations, what skills do we have, what skills don't we have that can support our communities to change these challenges into opportunities. And most of them have been also speaking around the mindset. Many refugees, they are part of refugee camps where there is a process it's called resettlement, where refugees have access to a third country. And the mindset of some refugees have been around, I'm in Uganda, either I don't need to work and wait for the third country to come, maybe my life will be better. But now the COVID-19 have come in. So what is the thinking right now? So everyone is really looking at surviving, and what is that I can do today so that's my kids eat, or what is that I can do today so that I'm able to to have a fulfillment, a sense of fulfillment on earth. So that's what basically we involved in. And currently, for example, also relating to what Matthias said, there is one innovation that has come in to support refugees, young kids in refugees to access learnings, and especially English, because English is one of the most barriers come to refugees. It's not easy to integrate because you come from places where either English is not, it's not your first language, French or other languages. It's not really easy. So they come in to support kids to still access education at their home. So what they do, they collect tablets and put in content around English or comic books and have it as packages. So they select families that has more than, let's say, 2 kids or 3 kids, and go install the tablets, their comic books, and they have a follow-up strategies and to help just these kids. By the time maybe the COVID situation, of course, it's not going to change, but by the time we have schools back, then these kids can have an opportunity to get back to school. We have another one that is also doing work with the stress management. It's called poetry. So it's therapy and poetry. So what they do is, do sensitization around this current situation, because also realize that many refugees have not been, how can I say, it's kind of a joke. It's kind of a joke that COVID is not there. And maybe them being refugees, first of all, so many of them still do not accept that it's real, but of course it's real. And there is not little awareness around how do you call it, stress management. And so many of them are really depressed that at the end of it, there's challenge around, is it really depression? What is it exactly? So these guys come in, in a form of giving people space to share stories. So it's not only me having challenges, but there are thousands of people having challenges right now, depression around this situation. Hearing stories, how have you done it? What can I do to also challenge that? Yeah.
Thank you, Emile, and thanks for touching on some of the barriers. I think we will hear more about this with Humphrey now. On the language can be a barrier, connectivity can be another one. If we want to be really continuing this conversation, this connection with the marginalized groups, very critical to have in mind. So I know Reach a Hand has been rolling out several innovations to be able to continue their socially driven work, providing really essential services throughout the crisis. If you can tell us a bit more, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Once again, I'm Humphrey Nabimanya, founder of Reach a Hand Uganda. Reach a Hand is a youth-centered organization that is focusing on sexual reproductive health and rights for young people. And also what we've been doing is basically to link young people with services, especially the reproductive health services, and also knowing that the biggest challenge that we're having in most parts of the country is that services for young people are not really accessible. So been like acting more of the bridging gap. Before the pandemic, we are mainly doing a lot of mobilization, reaching out to young people, coordinating with different partners to take them where the young people are and they're able to provide SRHR services. But when, also before that, we had started up more of a communication engagement. There were so much high on social media. We had designed a website called sautiplus.org that was providing all different topics and information where young people can reach out to. We had rolled it out in schools, in different community hubs where young people can be able to access internet and computers. And they were, that's how we're engaging with young people. Also, we had invented a Sauti Plus app that is both on Apple and Android. It does the same, and also we have about 700 young people that we work with all over the country in about 48 districts that Reach a Hand works in. And these young people are using the same app to create linkages with the young people in their communities and the health facilities through using referral cards that we call more of the referral e-cards, and they're both synced with the young person, the peer educator, and the hospital. So that was moving on smoothly and better. So when the COVID pandemic happened, it really affected so many organizations, especially that are working with communities directly, doing a lot of interpersonal communication, interpersonal approach in terms of reaching out to the young people. But now things were a bit, they were slowed down in that our approaches were now affected. But the advantage that we had is that we had already invented some of these applications and they are running. And also the reality is in the development world, mainly in the humanitarian sector, when it comes to organizations, we've been used so much in a traditional way of doing things. And now, COVID happens, and now we go into Zoom, we go into technology. Technology factors really get into play. And we find that so many organizations took it so much, it took them time to adopt the new ways. It took them time to design approaches on how they can reach out to the young people. But what had helped us is because our programs are youth-centered, and also they are designed by young people. So we had thought about all these innovations even before COVID. So when COVID happened, also it helped now our donors, our partners, to start also looking at how useful technology is, and also how useful different innovations that target young people are. But also in Uganda, we have a challenge whereby most young people cannot access smartphones. And I think also seen as witness the same thing like in the refugee areas that you're working in, the different rural communities we are working in. So some of these applications might not really make a lot of sense. Most of them are not on Facebook or WhatsApp that would really reach out to the information to. So we decided to invent the USSD code following other corporate partners and companies that were also using the same approach, because they're doing that approach to reach out to that person that doesn't have a smartphone but has a phone. So the USSD code has helped us to reach out to over 60,000 people that used it to have referrals. Also, it links young people to services, it links young people to information, it links young people even to legal aid, because there was a lot of sexual harassment, gender-based violence issues that really came with COVID. So how do we create some of these platforms so that our people that we are serving in the communities can be able to access information and whatever the support that they need to address their reproductive health challenges. So as Reach a Hand, those are some of the ways that we've been able to innovate during this situation, and also we have seen a lot of advantages coming on. For example, we have also streamed our Chadala series and other series that are really educational for young people, like MTV Sugar, created a streaming platform on the Sauti Plus TV that you can go and able to access. Hello? Technical problems, okay. Able to access information in different ways. So those are some of the new innovations that COVID brought us into, and also it has widened up our scope, it has widened up our knowledge, our way of thinking, to try and speak the language that really young people understand. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Humphrey. And if we stay with you for another few minutes, maybe based on all of this learning and also the work of the network of young people within your organization, do you have a few recommendations for aspiring entrepreneurs that are attending Kampala Innovation Week, how they can get further with their idea in this time? Maybe some key principles to have at heart when they're trying to roll out something?
Yeah. Basically, in Uganda, we use this language whereby so people can understand that in terms of, it's about, this is a space whereby we have to try out new things and we have to fail as many times as possible for us to get the exact product that really works for the young people. One of the another thing is about how do we put the people that we want to serve, because innovation is about creating solutions in our communities and our society. But how do we involve the members within our community in terms of also being part what you're designing, whatever product that you're designing, to better serve them? Because that's how you're going to be able to understand how to serve them better, and also how your innovation is going to create a difference into the different communities. And also surprisingly is that the innovations that are coming up to play right now, even if it's a money-making innovation, still there's a solution that is providing in our society. For example, Facebook came to connect all over, to connect us to the global world. And now we're living so much in a global village. We can understand with the lockdown that really happened. Most of us, about 70 to 80% of our time was online. Whether you're not in a meeting, but at least you're seeing what is happening online. We have seen even the traditional way of communicating, the TV industries, the radio, the media industry that we are in right now, all of them now turned into online. Everyone invented apps, everyone invented different ways on how to directly reach out to you. So how do you involve your society, the people that you're creating this innovation for, want to start the ownership with them, through them contributing ideas? We might be having capital, but the ideas come from the people that we create this product for. So those are some of the people that we have to put on the forefront, whatever ideas that we have and whatever ideas that we are building. Yes.
Thank you. As we continue, there are tools available out there for those with innovation ideas, entrepreneurship aspirations, and both your organizations are providing support to different type of entrepreneurs. If you can tell us a bit more about the incubation acceleration programs that you're running, EMILE and MATTHIAS, so that all the visitors can be aware of the options. Thanks.
Yeah. Great. So currently, like I shared that we have over, I think right now in Uganda, over 5 spaces that are being run by locals themselves. And part of what we do is, we have what we call a 3-month period. We call it Applied Research Innovation. And so it's a mixture of, both personal development and professional development. And the idea is that you can be able to, to have a little bit of, an understanding of who you are, and then, of course, then you know where you're going. And that's when we start changing that into, how can what you have support the community right now? And then after that, you're able to start, the journey of course, not just an entrepreneur, but the journey of challenges, becoming a real entrepreneur. And then we have this big acceleration program that is run by the Global SINA. And the Global SINA is the organization that stands for the license of the different SINAs that exist within communities. And so after we have these enterprises coming from the different SINAs, there is SINA Global that supports to accelerate them. And there is one that is coming in March. And I think the deadline is 13th December. So please feel free to check our website. And it's www.socialinnovationacademy.org. And feel free to, to read through. And if you're interested, It is not only for the members of within the seniors, but anyone out there is welcome to. But also, if you have young people who are willing to to challenge also the thinking around education. There are many of us who've studied university but still don't know why we're doing that. But if you have such people who want to rethink and change the world, please feel free to invite them. We have one office in Zambia here near Human Rights House, and there is another space in PG District. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. So for us, on the one hand, if you're a student in Uganda, then we have programs at 10 universities running. So there's a good likelihood that it's also at your university. It's all from idea stage to actually getting started, very practical design challenges, and kicking off your idea. Then I'm running our incubation program, and I want to reference the panel on financing that was on the stage here before. And one thing that was mentioned a few times is try to get your MVP out there as soon as possible. Try to get in front of users, show traction, right? Sometimes, and that's what we've seen co-designing all our programs together and around the needs and challenges that entrepreneurs face, is that sometimes that's easier said than done, right? There's a lot of jargon in the entrepreneurship world, but what does it actually mean? Like, how do you really build out your MVP in the right way? Like, what is the most important feature that you should prioritize? How do you find out what that feature is? How do you make sure that you're not wasting time and building something far too big, but you could actually satisfy the initial needs for your customers with something much more simplistic, which will enable you to learn much faster again? So these are some of the challenges, and that's not only in Uganda, that's something that entrepreneurs face worldwide, especially people from the tech sector or people who can build things, because they tend to build things that are more perfect than they need to be in the beginning. So what we do in our incubation program is we take startups on from all different sectors. Really, the main selection criterion is only the growth potential that you have. And we don't only work with high growth startups that might be globally available, but because it's also the local context and situation, also with dynamic enterprises that can grow, but maybe not necessarily become the next unicorn. So maybe as a rule of thumb, if it's realistic with the type of company and idea that you have to reach 50 million shillings of revenue a month in the next few years, that's something where we and sector agnostic, so all sectors, can definitely guide with. And really the value that we are offering are two things. On the one hand, we save you time. And this is something that is often not talked about enough, I think, because it's the biggest cost that you have, right? You could be doing something else and earn some money. You have to spend for your life, for your living, for your rent, for your food, for your transport, airtime, data, all these things, and they eat into your pocket. So if you're only saving 3 to 6 months on your journey and get the guidance to do better, that's what you should look for. Get that advice out there, be it for free or be it in programs, and really evaluate if they can help you. So we have co-designed together with the startups we work with a step-by-step program, basically from your idea, building a team, how to do it, how to find the right people, to prioritizing action. And we guide startups on a weekly basis. So we have an interaction, and startups that join our program sometimes even on a daily basis, they're in my inbox, and we really guide them based on what they need, because that's what's needed, right? It's about finding out what can I do or learn today and focus on today so I make real progress this next week. And the second thing we've started now in COVID times, and also because investment has become more scarce, we were like, let's not move back, but let's do more support. So we've started to invest in the startups that we work with in the incubator through a revenue-based equity model. So any startup that comes on board gets an initial investment together with this weekly guidance and basically an advice and mentorship flat rate, which we don't outsource to volunteer mentors, which is often sketchy, but we do it all in-house. So we get experts and we do these things in-house. So if you come on board, you get weekly guidance for a year, monthly guidance for another year, plus investment. And maybe as a last mention, we are running this innovation program in the digital human rights sector. And until 15th of December, we have a call for proposals running there. And together with the Digital Human Rights Lab, we're giving out 60 million shillings. We have a design sprint, and we have a mentorship program and pitch event. So if you're in the digital human rights space in Uganda doing human rights work, especially for and with human rights defenders, you might want to check this out. Just look for Startup Africa on Facebook, on the social media, or go to our website, startupafrica.org/DHRL, Digital Human Rights Lab, DHRL, to find out more about that.
Great, thank you so much. Clearly, there is a broad offer here in Uganda for the entrepreneurs, the innovators. As members of Startup Uganda and participants in this Kampala Innovation Week, we are here to support this creativity. I just want to add also from the side of the Response Innovation Lab, we are running right now a COVID-19 Innovation Prize. It's about 80 million shillings in prizes to reward the work that you may have already been doing responding to COVID-19 or to some of its impacts. If you haven't applied yet, deadline is tomorrow, so you have another day to do so. We are looking forward to reading about all your great ideas. Yeah. I think as we are winding down, I would like to come back to you, Jackie. We had a few connectivity issues, but looks like you're back, which is great. And we are going to be then ready for questions, if some questions have been compiled online, or if there are some live here with us. Before we start with the questions, Jackie, you started by telling us about all of these transformative trends. And for sure, the changes we've been going through as a society is here to stay now. One of the panelists mentioned entrepreneurs didn't know, are we just putting a hold on what we're doing, waiting for COVID to go away, or do we need to transform? I think we've all now come to this point where we know we cannot ignore it. Living in this time of pandemic is the new normal. And as we are continuing to respond to the effects of the crisis, but also we're entering a recovery phase, we are moving on to reconstructing and transforming. How can we now take advantage of those new positive trends that COVID-19 may have helped initiate, and how can we make sure we leverage those digital trends in a way that is going to be driving socially inclusive development? Over to you, Jackie.
Sure thing. Thank you, Charlene. So the first thing I would like to talk about, and it will also echo what EMILE was actually touching on, is protection and end user protection. So as we, what tends to happen whenever you have to adopt technological solutions rapidly, which is what COVID-19 has forced us to do, unfortunately, is sometimes we tend to create
Should we give her a minute? Hopefully the internet is going to come through.
Can you? Okay, I think you're back now.
Is she back?
Yeah, I think we're...
Okay, great. Yeah, please just, I think you can start again, unfortunately. Otherwise, maybe I'll invite some of the panelists here to share some additional thoughts that they wanted to share with the audience today before we can get Jackie back on. Anyone wanted to add any considerations based on the interventions of the other panel members today?
Yeah, I think I would love to share a little bit about, I think the experience also with creating really social enterprises also from the disadvantaged background. It's not really an easy, it's not an easy journey, but the beauty about it is it's how can I say, it comes from heart. It's not you coming in and wanting to really make money, but rather looking at a change, of course, and change brings really money. And a colleague said something here around, right now it's not, it's not time for competition, but I think really time to, to collaborate, because I'm not sure who right now is an expert around this whole COVID-19 stuff. I am sure everyone in their community is the expert. There is a way everyone is dealing with this. So he said something around, even if you're an entrepreneur and want really to work with communities, please involve them and learn from them. Let them also be experts, because they have a lot you need to learn from them. And I think this is really something that in all sectors I invite everyone, not really around competition. It's not about competition, but rather now how can we stand together to, to all fight this situation. And that's at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation. And really live this part of, I'm an expert, I'm a professional, I know it. These guys are actually professionals. So, and if you really need to learn from them, calm down and just learn.
Thanks, Emile. Humphrey, I was seeing you nodding. Did you want to add anything?
No, I was agreeing to what he's saying because, yeah, it's quite really important. But also one of the things to really add on is to look at, for example, like the Innovation Week is more of like a village of ideas. How do we also expand some of these ideas even where they're not able to reach? Next year, we are launching up something at Reach a Hand. Basically, one is that we are scaling up in Kenya. We are merging with Love Matters Kenya. It's also another portal that talks about reproductive health issues and all that. And then we're going to see how we can franchise that. Also, we're working with about 700 young champions in over 46 districts, and these are the ones that we train. Most of them are not even experts. They have not even graduated at Makerere University, but they can be able to operate a phone. They can as well be able to create ideas. So how we've been able to work with them is that they're able to link us with the communities and also have these communities linked up with the health facilities, but also have these communities as well linked up to information and the services that they can get. As I speak right now, the Sauti Plus portal, we have accumulated about 300 young people that we are now serving on the same portal. We have also gone ahead. And another thing that we have to address is the issue of how do these young people be able to generate income. I mean, like, we can't be working in societies, but everyone will be saying, how am I benefiting? You're giving me information, you're telling me about these services, you're telling me about whatever ideas that you have or innovations, but how do those innovations that we are creating have an economic benefit element into our communities that we're talking about? You might be making money, let's say as a business person. For me, I'm speaking from a humanitarian kind of sector. But also our humanitarian ideas and innovations are also money-making business, because there's a pot, there's a basket all of us go to, to lobby. And we're lobbying that income because we want to use the income or the funding to be able to provide solutions for our communities, because that's a solution that you're selling to come and address to a challenge. But if you bring me that solution, for example, I'm a young person in a deep area, let's say in Bidibidi or Nachi Valley. I'm a refugee. I've passed through so many challenges as a young person. And yes, you're telling me that, reach a hand, we want to address your reproductive health issue as a young person. Yes, I'm going to accept but at the end of the day, what am I getting from you as reach a hand? What am I getting from you as SINA or as startup? Yeah, startup, innovation lab. For example, the 80 million that you're putting on, but the deadline is ending tomorrow, which you can extend because you have a lot of COVID response ideas. But what are you bringing in return? In return, as a young person, I should use your solution as well to earn a living or to get something. So at Rahu, what we have done, we have innovated an entrepreneurship program. So what it does is that we look out for corporate partners like Unilever, like DKT that are selling condoms, Maristops, PSI, what Safe Border is now doing, because now that border person who's riding is also able to sell some family planning commodities that are benefiting the society. But so at the end of the day, we have to transform our solutions to the communities that they can also benefit from them economically. So let's think about attaching livelihood programs to our solutions, to our innovations, so that they're able to benefit those communities. So that is something that I wanted to really put across, that we have to really think about. Reach a Hand, we are doing it. Out of the 700 young people we're working with all over the country, about 150 were pre-testing that idea. We have approached corporate partners. I see some Sante pads like Holic pads, Afri pads, and whatever. We have this basket which we have created, and young people are able now to sell the products and they get a profit of themselves apart from the voluntary pay that we give them. But that is something that we have to really think about. How do our innovations not only creating solutions to address a challenge, but the solution should also be more in contributing to those young people or to those people in their communities to have an economic benefit that comes with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Humphrey. Very important points around how a true innovation is for humanitarian and development responses is to move away from the dependence mentality. Very important for sure, and I truly believe we still need to invest funds in humanitarian and development aid. But at the same time, we need to be cognizant of blurred boundaries between what social response actors and for-profit actors can do, and how those collaborations can yield really more impact going forward. Jackie, you're back with us. I'm sorry we had lost you for a moment, but we really wanted to hear about your thoughts around building for recovery and a more socially inclusive world thanks to the COVID-19 innovations that have been initiated. Over to you.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me see if I can do this quickly. So there are three things that we need to consider for. Number one, as I was talking about, is protection, which means we need to ensure that the solutions we put out there do not make the lives of the people that we're trying to protect worse. And that one has very many dimensions. Some of the protection issues would be, is our solution going into the financial inclusion, giving access to credit, but does that access to credit, for example, make this family less resilient to economic shock? Another one is our solution going to propagate domestic violence or go ahead and create more division between the community? Or is our solution going to create any privacy issues or data sharing issues? So, and protection is in two ways. There's the protection, which is the humanitarian protection, but there's also protection, which is the consumer protection, which is really regulated by the government. And so as you design for this, you need to design right from the beginning with protection consideration, because usually the cost of recovering from a protection blunder is more expensive than both socially and financially, than the cost of just designing right from the beginning. The other thing we really need to look at quite strongly is sustainability. As much as, and this one is also speaking to our humanitarian actors and our humanitarian partners, as much as we would like to get, the solutions at the lowest possible price, we need to understand that these the startups, the digital service providers, mobile operators need to be able to have some sustainable baseline for them to continuously provide this service. Otherwise, you end up creating a situation which you have seen very many times where solution is provided, people are happy, they use it for a year or two, and then the funding runs out. And so now you have a community that is used to using a solution. This is helping them, but now there's no way to sustain it. And then finally, this one is regulatory. It really would be good for governments and regulating authorities to accommodate the innovation process. Many times innovation, this is what I say, innovation has to come before regulation. You cannot regulate something that you don't quite know what it will be. And in many instances, you have governments and regulating authorities that have such stringent laws around how the innovations can work, and they make it quite difficult to be flexible around what we can and cannot do. And then the last one is, and I think I saw Humphrey talk about this, is the continuous, and EMILE too, is a continuous iteration. You try something, it works, you then improve upon it. And I think also on a personal note, many times you'll find the simplest technology is actually what you need, and not the big buzzwords like the blockchains and the AI. Many times, as you have found out, not many people have smartphones, so a basic USSD is a good place to start. Then as the people you're supporting grow and mature in technology, then you keep up with them, but you can never go ahead of the community that you're serving. That would be it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for this really excellent conclusion. I think we're ready for questions in case there are any. This is a tough one. Is humanitarian insurance a thing? And how has it been affected by COVID-19? Humanitarian insurance. Yeah. Does anyone want to volunteer for this question? I'm not quite sure I get really well what is hinted at in terms of humanitarian insurance. Like the insurances the NGOs are getting for their humanitarian work? I don't know if it's hitting something.
I've not understood very well the question, but I'll try to. Insurance. Okay. Humanitarian insurance package. Okay. Is humanitarian insurance a thing? Okay. Insurance, maybe you mean, is it stable? Is it secured? Is that the question? Maybe we would love to understand the question, because humanitarian doesn't have insurance. It's us you, Chris.
I'm going to get that question sorted out, but we have another one here in the meantime.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Hussein. I am from the International University of East Africa. I have mainly two brief questions. First of all, you all talked about supporting innovators and providing them solutions to providing them support for them to bring the ideas to fruition. And I think Mr. Humphrey had a very good point of how do we support them economically while also helping them develop the idea. Because what I see in Uganda, a lot of young people have ideas, but they have a lot of other personal issues that prevent them from pursuing the idea, because they might have a very good idea, but instead of going and pursuing it, they will have to resort to getting a job at a normal, maybe minimum wage or something, and just to sustain their family, and maybe they have family debt and all those issues. So how can your programs ensure that a person is comfortable and not mentally stressed by their personal issues while working on the idea? And the second question is, I wanted to ask how much or what percentage of refugees have access to smartphones or any digital device and internet, and how can it be eased? Because we as innovators might want to come up with very many ideas, but if the end users don't have a way to access it, then our ideas, although they might be brilliant, they're pretty useless. So I would like to know how big is, or what is the best way to reach the refugees? Is it by using, developing for feature phones? Is it developing for smartphones? What method can we use to reach them best? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions. I think I'd like to ask Emile to respond to the first one, because for sure it is a very big challenge. If we don't want innovators to only come from the most privileged areas of our society, we need to also find ways to support those who come from places where they need a job to sustain themselves.
Yeah, something I didn't mention. I myself is a refugee, and I've been here in Uganda for 10 years. And that has been the biggest challenge for myself, sustaining my dream and also surviving. And it's not really easy. It's not easy at all. So one of from the experience, what we've learned for sure is also, especially also in the urban areas. I think in the refugee camps, not that, how can I say, sometimes people have time, for sure, to at least to give to learnings. There has been challenges around innovation that's come to support refugees, because refugees still complain that, of course, we have innovators who comes and we go through trainings, we have a certificate, done. Then what we do, we are far away from the idea of certification. We really from the idea of your job. Whatever job you create, your innovation is certificates. You don't need to have 1,000 papers really to look for life, because your life, you carry it. And what we do is, like for example in Kampala, it's been not easy because first of all, these young people need to pay rent, and then if your program is too long, then it's hard for sure to balance. So part of what we do, besides them being innovators, we give them a chance also to have, professional skills. So, for example, part of these guys go also through a program where they are taught how to be mentors, and also we give them opportunities and give a little that can help them besides in their journey, besides the innovation coming in the world, but also how can they have results at the end of the day. So the mindsets, so it really helps around the mindset, because I think also most of the time it's really around the mindset, like how do I really survive? Because it really takes a lot, but once you start having a feeling of where you're going, it becomes at some point easy. I myself still suffer. I mean, it's not that I have a good life and stuff like that, but what helps me wake up every day is the fact that how many people have trained, for example, how many people, what am I contributing to that? And every day, of course, that's where opportunities start coming in. But, giving really a platform for them to share these ideas, and also maybe one of the experience we've learned is many people who come from disadvantaged, marginalized areas want mostly to have, the sense of supporting. So the ideas around, NGOs, just supporting, not really making money, and really trying to shift from that mindset, because everyone thinks, helping is just doing for free. Also getting away from the idea of free, because what is free at the end of the day? Who defines what free is? It's not about money, but really rather, thinking about, what is the challenge right now in this community, and what is the value that I'm giving out there, and how much can the person give? Not what is the problem, I'm suffering, I have to help this, because that has been also the problem around the mindset, and we're really trying to work on the mindset change.
Thanks, Emile. And I can't move to the next question before I let Matthias speak for 1 minute, because we've had a lot of debate about grant funding, etc. So 1 minute, please.
Amazing, thank you. Thanks for your question. Regarding the first question, it's a bit like the hen and egg problem, right? You need funding to do things, but on the other hand, investors and so on want to see something, right? To de-risk what you're doing. And there is entrepreneurs that come with quite some entitlement that they first need to get over with. Because if you have a great idea, you're not entitled to get money from any investor, or even at a pitch competition or a grant, right? There's always a reason why this money is given out. So the question is, and especially supporting entrepreneurs, I need to push this responsibility to entrepreneurs, because it's the entrepreneur who has to find solutions what can I do to start this off? Even if you need to earn your living, I work with entrepreneurs that are not full-timing on their startups right now because the situation is just in a way that it doesn't allow them to spend all the time on their startup. So they have side jobs and so on. But the important thing is find easy and fast ways and cheap ways, and they are there to de-risk your idea, to get started, to show action. Because what investors want, we've heard it before, is on the one hand, they want to see that you're the one to make it happen, meaning you have the skills and the commitment to go for it. And what shows better commitment than in times where you don't have funding, still be pushing for it? If I give you $100,000, it's very easy for you or anyone to be working on it, right? Find those ways. And there is many ways. You don't even need to build an excessive online platform. You can start many ideas and testing the value proposition through WhatsApp, through Facebook. And many good ideas get started like this. Even billion-dollar companies get started like this. Hack it together, right? That's what an entrepreneur has to do. And your question was also, how can we support entrepreneurs with this? And that's exactly the point. Before investing, there can be programs, there can be guidance, even just showcasing how an idea could be started today and not next week.
Thank you very much, Matthias. And now I'd like to go to you, Jackie, with the questions on the digital ecosystem for refugee settlements. There was a question around, smartphone penetration, access to connectivity, and the GSMA has excellent resources around this. So if you want to share a couple of facts with us, and then maybe your view about how that information can help innovators decide what is the right technology to invest in. But before we go there, I just want to challenge this a little bit. Maybe the answer will be it should not be a digital solution. So in some cases, we have to really be remembering innovation is not all about technology and it's not all about digital. But back to you, Jackie. Thank you.
Yes, I do agree with you, Charlene, completely. Sometimes digital is not the answer, but you can innovate without digital, it is true. So the GSMA has some research from Uganda in refugee context. This one is from about 1.5 years ago, and this was done in Bidi refugee camp. So it's not for all the refugee settlements, but we are hoping, at least Bidi can give us a good image of the others. And it's called The Digital Lives of Refugees. If you look at the GSMA website, you should be able to find it. So some of the things we've found out is about 49% of refugees have a phone, at least in Bidi settlement. And of those 49%, 12% had a basic feature phone. 29% had a 12% had a basic phone, and then 29% had a feature phone, the one with limited internet use, and then 8% had a smartphone. So immediately, if you look at this population, if you decide you're going to use an app, it's going to be difficult for majority of the phone users. And then an interesting demographic here is also 37% of all the refugees that we interviewed borrowed a phone. And that one is also an interesting demographic, which means, for example, whenever they are going to know they're going to receive their cash transfer via mobile money, they would borrow a phone, put in the SIM card, get their cash it all out, and that's it. But 4% are currently not using a phone. They had used one before, they don't have one now, and 10% had never used a phone completely. And so this is just for Bidi, but I think you can see how it would translate to the rest of the refugee settlements, and also reflective of rural Uganda, by the way. So when you look at how do I then find a solution for such a community, number one, you need to talk to them and find out, okay, so we know how many people have phones, but there's also the other question of how many people can read, how many people can write. Then you look at, can we use paper as a delivery medium? And then we make those decisions. And so, yes, unfortunately, sometimes the answer is not digital. Sometimes you need to set up a classroom and go there and teach, physically face-to-face. You can use a trainer model. Or maybe, involve but more importantly, involve the community in your ideation, in how you design the solution. That is always the best way to do it. And also, just quite importantly, you must do these digital needs assessments right from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie. Maybe also one point that I want to emphasize, the very strong gender divide in terms of use of mobile phones and connectivity is also important. So if your target group is women, you need to bear this in mind. I think we're out of time, but thank you so much for the really lively contributions. Thank you to the audience, and I can't see.
Just a simple one. There was a question that came in a little earlier. So it's how helpful have insurance companies been to humanitarian organizations and services across the country? I think that was the main question that came through with insurance. You can just answer that in like a second or so. There's a question that this gentleman had. So we're going to see if we can pile them up and then just wrap that up.
Okay, thank you all. My question is on humanitarian work and also startups. So you see, they've organized this, but most of the people you see here are maybe doing commercial businesses, but then there is also humanitarian innovation. So how do startups or Startup Uganda work with maybe young humanitarians to boost their idea in the community? For example, I work with an organization, and basically, I believe in investment first. I'm funding my organization for now because I want to create value for my organization such that if I get someone, I know how to defend that value. So how do you guys work with humanitarian innovators? And I think this guy, the question he wanted to try to ask also goes to the humanitarian sector, social cycle support for these innovators. How do you provide social cycle support? Because you're not going to add value if things are not working out. So I wanted us to talk about humanitarian innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So on humanitarian insurance, is it okay if I just give a quick answer? In a way, NGOs are businesses, so NGOs have insurances for many purposes. They insure cars, they insure their workers, health insurance, different types of insurance. They insure their facilities, they protect their assets so that if things are stolen, if there is a natural disaster, etc., the things are protected. And if you're in a conflict zone, the insurances are also different. But I think we can't go much further. It would take us to a really technical discussion that I'm not really qualified to lead. I hope that's all right. So now the questions on how we work with humanitarian innovators. There are different types of support that we are providing in this group. Some of us work more with commercially driven entrepreneurs, and some will be working more with non-profit ideas. So maybe Humphrey, you want to talk about the how to be a humanitarian innovator, a development innovator. Because Rich Hand is right one. So like how it got to this point.
Thank you. I mean, like how he has really stated it, Juma, that one is investing in himself. And also I'm happy Mackenzie is here, is part of our journey. For example, Reach a Hand, it was through, first look at your environment, for example, because all of us that have startups, especially also young people, we give up so early because of the frustration that he has talked about. In terms of also us that are already established, how are we also supporting different startups in different areas? For example, Reach a Hand invented a youth fund, basically to sub-grant organizations that are just starting, especially for young people, that are also youth-led in terms of looking at what ideas that you have. Next year as well, we are launching up another youth fund of about $20,000 that we're going to be giving out to basically startup ideas, vetted, and about 4 people are going to be able to win. It's something we are going to announce early March, so it's something that you have to look out. But in all, it's about you investing in yourself. And investment in yourself, it doesn't mean the money. You have to look at the human capital that you can utilize on, especially your friends, your relatives, If you have a job, also first look at that as your first source of funding. If you have people that are really supporting your idea, that's another source of funding that you have. So you go on like accumulating like that. And most of us, we move a lot. I remember back in the day, I used to be called a proposal, like a paper person. Because in most cases, I used to move with a lot of documents in people's offices, and I'm trying to explain what I'm willing to do. And also most of the mistakes we make is that we go and register a company, and what we can move with is a registration document that, you know what, this is my idea, I've already registered it, and whatever, I'm ready to roll. So whoever that you're pitching it to might not be able to see that idea because it's just on paper. But how do you first, start forward and then you start working backward? In that you have your idea, you have yourself, you have your friends, you have everyone, and that's the funding that you have. Pretest that idea with your friends. Everyone is going to voluntarily support your idea because they will believe in it on how you also believe in it. So once you go, let's say, to Humphrey and you're pitching that idea, you already have, what you can show that this is what I've been doing, and I believe if I partner up with you, I'm able to even do better. So you're going to have a lot of collaborations. And so the voluntary spirit starts from your idea. It doesn't mean that you have to go and look for a job to start volunteering. No. Everyone that has an idea, you can volunteer with your idea by yourself in investing in it. So the investment doesn't mean money. Most of us always talk about, I don't have capital, I don't have capital. And the question is, if you don't have capital, what do you mean by capital? Because if you have the people that are believing in your idea, that's the first capital that you have, and it's the most expensive capital that you will ever have. So money will come. So money is mainly to boost up whatever that you've been doing, but you have to first utilize the opportunities that you have to make this idea work. So that's how Richer Hand were able to be where we are right now, because we utilize even that human capital is the same capital that we are still moving on with. Right now. In Kenya, we're establishing ourselves, and it doesn't mean that we have money, but money is going to come. But the people that are there, they love the idea, they believe in idea, and they're doing that. We're now also in Southern Sudan. The young people that are there, and these are some of the young people we used to work with, and they're establishing that. So it is more like, how do you also look at your idea broader than yourself? That is also important with the people that you're creating that idea with. Be it business, be it whatever that we are doing on this other side. And this is not more of a humanitarian. The humanitarian is that our ideas, these are business ideas that we're running. It's just that they are providing solutions, to the people, and also these solutions are depending on some other investors. But also those investors that are investing in ideas, it's not about charity. They're also making money by investing in those ideas. So those are some of the ecosystems that you have to understand. And also, if that idea that you're creating, what business sense is it really making? So whoever that is going to give you funding is because your idea makes a lot of business sense, not because they love giving. It has to make a lot of business sense at the end of the day. So the funders that are funding us is because these ideas are making business sense for them, but also the advantage that they're creating solutions, to the challenges and the problems that we are facing in our different communities. So that's why I was saying that if we are going into these communities, how also do our ideas or solutions we are creating that are being funded are able to empower these communities economically, so that even if the project is running after 5 years, you've maybe created over 50 to 100 jobs of the people that you've been serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Humphrey. I love it when the panelists make all the points I want to make.
Oh.
No, it's really great because I just want to add that sometimes it's complicated for the humanitarian and the business world to understand each other, and that's what led actually to the creation of the Response Innovation Lab. We're trying to be that interface that helps you understand better what's going on in the humanitarian sector if you're coming from a startup, and vice versa. And to do that, as Humphrey was saying, it's important that you can show what you're doing. So we're providing help with things like connecting you with technical experts in your field. The humanitarian world is no longer a world of charity. It is highly professionalized, and it's really important to understand the technical debates going on in this field if your idea is going to be relevant. And then we also provide support with monitoring and evaluation, because those are really critical principles you need to apply to your work so that you can come to potential investors, be them NGO or private sector investors, to show that what you have is worth it. It may not be very elaborate yet, but it has already started yielding some kind of proof of concept. So we do this as a non-financial support. And then there is still seed funding in some cases. So we're also one of those that can support your ideas if they are good. Any final remarks?
I think I said my final remarks. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us on Kampala Innovation Week. It was a pleasure. And thank you so much to the panelists. Special mention to Jackie from Nairobi as well.